Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are. Hello and welcome to UAGC TLC's conference. My name is Teresa Handy, and I am a program chair and assistant professor at UAGC in the Gen 101 program, and I'm the host for this session. And that session is called How Once Feared AI and ASR Technologies Have Become Key to Unlocking Belonging. By joining us today, you acknowledge that this session is being recorded and will be shared with TLC-related materials. Microphones will be muted for this presentation, but we encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat. Also, we will have enabled the live transcription, so if you would like to use it, please click Show Captions, the Show Captions button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Now, I am pleased to introduce to you Eileen Dunham, Product Marketing Manager with Verbit.
Thank you so much, Teresa. I am super happy to be here. And as you mentioned before, we're going to be covering different AI and ASR technologies that we as educators can incorporate into our teaching, into our institutional practices to help foster that sense of belonging and inclusion for students. And before I begin, I just want to give a brief introduction of myself. So I'm really honored to be here, first of all, because the University of Arizona is my alma mater, and I studied all 4 years of my undergraduate career there. And I've really been working in the realm of student success, digital accessibility, inclusion, and specifically captioning for many years now. And I actually worked at the Disability Resource Center while I was in college for all 4 years, where I really had that hands-on experience in kind of learning about students' learning experience, especially students with disabilities, and how their experiences are when it comes to their accommodation needs and accessibility. So what are we going to be covering today? Today, we're going to cover why belonging matters to a student's academic outcomes. We're going to cover different practices that you can incorporate into your teaching to foster that sense of intellectual belonging. We're going to cover specific research on AI and ASR and how it's being used for accessibility. And at the end of the presentation, I hope that you'll walk away with a deeper understanding of how we can use these technologies to help fuel that sense of belonging. All right, so why is belonging so important? And I think that's kind of an obvious question, right? Like, yes, belonging is important, and it's important to us as humans, right? But I think sometimes we tend to think of it as like a social concept or a social construct where students feel like they belong when they're having social activities, when they're talking with their peers or their friends and that sort of thing. But when you put your mind to it, you really understand that belonging has an impact, and it has an impact on a student's academic experience. So as we can see here, students who report a stronger sense of belonging, they're more likely to persist in their studies, they're more likely to engage with content that they're learning, and they're more likely to persist when they receive critical feedback. And another important thing to keep in mind is that students aren't just students. They also have lives outside of the classroom and outside of their online learning experience. Um, they're likely to have some mental health struggles. As many as 50% of college students do. They have stress, they have anxiety, they might have depression. And all of those things can really impact their academic outcomes. So that really comes back to the idea that, there's so many things that we as educators can do, large and small, to fuel that sense of belonging when we're teaching. And a really great example of that I came across a couple weeks ago is from a podcast that I was listening to from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And this researcher from Stanford came on the podcast to discuss a study that he conducted. And in that study, he had a teacher grade essays, as they usually do for their class. And in half of the essays, they decided to add an additional note of encouragement before returning those essays to those students. And in that note said something along the lines of like, hey, I've left this critical feedback, but it's because I believe in you and I see your potential. So that was half of the essays. In the other half, they didn't leave any additional note of encouragement. So the results of that basically were that in the set of essays that did include that note of additional encouragement, 70% of those students opted to revise their essay. In the group of students who didn't receive that additional note of encouragement, only 17% opted to revise their essay. So that really comes down to the idea that there's so many things that we as educators can do, even as small as leaving an additional note of encouragement to a student that you may see that is struggling can really make an impact on their academic outcome and how they progress throughout the semester. So they might be struggling at the beginning, but with those notes of encouragement, they might be more likely to succeed because of that. We could do other things such as providing additional opportunities to discuss an activity that students may be struggling with. And another important thing to think about is, have I set up my classroom with the right technology to help fuel students' sense of belonging? So different things that we can start kind of thinking about to help fuel that sense of belonging, that sense of intellectual belonging that we're talking about here. So the next thing I want to talk about is, it's one thing to talk about belonging and why it's important, and I think we all acknowledge that. But it's another thing to set goals or success factors. So, we as educators, I think, especially following all of this great information that we're receiving at this conference, we have to think about what type of goals can we set to help fuel that sense of belonging in the classroom and at our institution. So what you're seeing here is the maturity model, and it's this model that we've been, showing to our higher education partners for a number of years. And it's an example of, a model or like different types of goals that, on an institutional level that one can set to help promote that sense of belonging. And this is specifically related to accessibility. So within this maturity model, we have different goals depending on where the institution is in terms of their accessibility goals and their journey. So, if you're just kind of starting off in your accessibility journey, you might be more on the reactive side. So that could be kind of like, you have kind of a simplified process for like addressing accommodation needs, but it's not necessarily on an institutional level. And then you have schools that are more on the proactive side that are, really looking at like incorporating inclusion and accessibility on an institution-wide level. So that's not only for students with disabilities, but also, you know, student experiences outside the classroom. So that could be commencements, whether they're being held in person or even live streamed online in the case of a global campus, just as an example of that. It could be a conference being held, such as this one. And captioning is one example of that. So there are schools that have really taken a model like this and, created their own version of that. An example of that is the California State University system, Oregon State University, Berkeley University. There are different great examples of schools that have really set really institution-wide goals of where they're really focusing on kind of fueling that sense of belonging, not just for students that really need it, for those students that are falling behind, but all students, taking that proactive measure. So, that brings me back to setting goals. And it's really important for us to start thinking about how we want to set those goals, whether you're an instructor or a department head, or you're working in the Disability Accessibility Services office. You want to start thinking about that. So now that I've talked about goals, I want to talk specifically about captioning, because captioning is one of those technologies that many institutions have really been using, especially in recent years, to help cultivate that sense of belonging. So if we can bring up that poll, I want to ask everyone, how does captioning contribute to a sense of belonging? And feel free to put, whatever idea, anything that comes to mind in the chat. I'll give you 30, 40 seconds to kind of think through that. Okay, so I think there's been enough time. So let's talk about it. How does captioning foster a sense of belonging? And there's many obvious reasons, right? It helps foster a sense of belonging, especially for those students with disabilities that may have hearing related disabilities. They may have be hard of hearing, or they may be deaf. Those are students that really need the captioning to learn. But I think in this day and age, we've learned that many students, regardless of whether they have disabilities, are really opting to use captions all the time when they're learning, when they're watching, streaming video online, watching Netflix and so forth. Many people are just, finding the value of captioning, and that's because captioning is another way to ingest information. It's another way to learn, right? Because there may be students in your classroom that are, maybe they're auditory learners, so it's really useful for them to watch a video and hear your lecture when they're learning. But there might be other students that learn better when they read. And so when we're in a digital space and we're often using a lot of video and audio material, providing that captioning or providing an alternative form of learning, such as a transcript, is really going to make a difference for those students that have, those varied like learning styles. So this is why all captioning your content can really foster that sense of belonging. So now let's talk about, let's say that you've gotten to a point where, you really see the value in captioning, and you're looking at, what type of solution can I incorporate into my classroom or within my department? And you're trying to think of how to approach it. So let's talk about that. How can you approach, choosing the right technology for your classroom? And these are some of the things that you can incorporate into that process. So one of the things that you want to consider is integrations. Does that solution offer an integration into the systems that you currently use? So if you're using an existing learning management system such as Canvas or D2L, or if you're posting video on YouTube, you want to make sure that your captioning solution integrates with that, because as educators, I feel like our time is valuable, and we want to focus on what we feel passionate about, which is teaching. And using a solution that really streamlines the captioning process and takes away less time from your teaching practice is going to support that. Another thing to consider is just to start discussing with staff and faculty. There may be others in your institution that are already using a solution. And it's also really good just to get the conversation started, because there may not be others that are familiar with the benefits of captioning and how it can impact, the outcomes of their course. Next is to make sure to gather student feedback. I think it's always important to make students, the center of that process. And I do remember from my undergraduate career is that at the end of every semester, they would share like a survey where a student could give feedback on that course. And I think actually that's a great opportunity to even ask, like, how did you feel about the technology that was being used in the classroom? If you had a captioning solution already implemented, you can ask, how did you feel about the quality of that captioning? Is there area for improvement there? Another thing to think about. And lastly is regular assessment. So if your institution is already using a solution, make sure to evaluate it regularly. Look at, how streamlined the process is, the different workflows involved in using that technology. And one thing I haven't talked about is quality and accuracy. you want to make sure that your captioning solution is accurate. And why is that important? This brings me to my next question. Do you believe that imperfect captioning contributes to or hinders a student's sense of belonging? So we'll bring up that poll just for 30, 40 seconds to give you all a chance to respond. Okay. So I think we've had a couple seconds to respond now. And before we talk about that question, I want to show you this video. So just making sure that you all can hear this video, first of all.
That is embarrassing! That is embarrassing! That is embarrassing! That is embarrassing!
So in this video, what you hear is someone saying something that could be interpreted in multiple ways. Now, personally, when I hear this video, I hear that is embarrassing. But if you put your mind to it, you can like hear all of the things on this list: Bart Simpson bouncing, that isn't my receipt, and so forth. So that really ties into the question I just asked. Does imperfect captioning affect a student's sense of belonging? And yes, it does affect it. And why is that? Is because, a student reading an incorrect caption can really make or break, whatever assignment they're working on, whatever test they're taking next. Because if a student is relying on those captions and they read a caption, a word that has been captioned incorrectly, that can affect their academic outcomes. And that's even more important when we're talking about within education, you have STEM related content, you have courses with medical terminology, you have graduate level content where there's a lot of different niche subject matter. And in those courses, whether it's an introductory course or even an advanced course, it's super important that the captions are capturing what is actually being said in the student's course video effectively and accurately. So as part of this situation in terms of like evaluating, accuracy of captioning solutions and understanding how ASR technologies are currently being used within education and, the entire world in general, my company did a survey on ASR technologies looking to understand that. So how did we commission the survey? We did a survey through a global research firm where they, contacted specific survey respondents. So these respondents were already familiar with captioning. They had some sort of familiarity with AI captioning. They knew about accessibility. So it's people who, were already familiar with it to a certain extent. And these were some of our findings. So we found that 70% of people are actually using the free built-in ASR tools. So that includes like Zoom, Teams, maybe the YouTube auto captions if you're uploading a video. 70% of people are still using those free tools. However, we did find, within the same survey is that 55% of respondents said that accuracy varies. So that's something that we tend to see with the free ASR tools. Very interesting. The next interesting finding was that many people don't understand how to use the ASR or like automatic captioning tools effectively. They might struggle to implement it. That really goes back to like the workflow integrations, which can kind of make things easier for people who are not really familiar with the ASR captioning. And then, the the next finding was the challenges that kind of prevented people from using automatic captioning solutions. So some reported that, the value of the technologies is unclear. Some have data and privacy concerns. And then a good chunk of that really reported the inaccuracies of existing or free tools. So this is really where we are in terms of the market, and in terms of like where the technology stands in terms of automatic captioning. So now that you're familiar with automatic captioning, I want to talk about the difference between free uncustomized tools and customized tools. And this is just an example of that. So to the left here, you're going to see a transcript, which has several mistakes here highlighted in red. And then to the right, you see a transcript that has been corrected through customization. So I'm going to play this video to you, a short clip, so you can see here exactly what's being said here.
They step up when they're needed. And right now, we're needed. We're needed to protect the world because our own safety is at stake. And again, you want to have a war, just let Putin go ahead and take Kyiv, make sure they move on, see what happens in Poland, Hungary, and other places along that border. Then you have a war.
Okay. So what you've heard here is a transcript from, the President Biden. And he's talking about several things, but I just want to point out a specific example here. So you can see in the transcript to the left where it says here, we're needed to protect the world because our own safety is at stake. And to the right, it says, we're needed to protect the world because our own safety is at stake. So there are two different stakes here. And this is just one example of where you can see the differences between a generic or a free ASR and a customized ASR. So, when you're getting to a point and you're trying to choose the right captioning solution, what I'm trying to get at here is that it's really important to consider whether that ASR is customized, because when an automatic captioning solution is customized, there are different things that are going on behind the scenes to help provide greater accuracy. And when it comes to education, when it comes to your courses, there are different things that are going on to kind of prepare the technology and make it better. And those are some of the things that, not just my company, but other providers are likely doing, is that they're preparing the automatic captioning with the course syllabus, terms related to the course. They're looking at video, past lectures to prepare the system to ingest those terms into the system so that the technology is really prepared to provide that accurate captioning.
They step.
And lastly, I just want to end with these takeaways. So we've discussed a lot of things today, and I think what it really comes down to is, there's so many things that we as educators can do to fuel that sense of belonging. Captioning, specifically automatic captioning, is one of those. Many students are still reporting that, the inaccessibility of content is a barrier to learning. Many students prefer to watch videos with captions on. And as we talked about it, there are, many free tools. Many people are using free tools. However, there's an increased need for accuracy, which is why it's more important to kind of evaluate the tools you're using and making sure that they're effective. So I just want to end with that note. And with that being said, if we still have a couple of minutes, I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you. I'm just gonna check the chat here. I see a couple of things. Lots of great feedback. Yeah. Yeah, someone mentioned here that it ties to UDL principles. That's something that I didn't mention, but also super important is that captioning is one of those tools that really help, foster that universal design for learning, not just benefiting one student, but all students in the classroom. Great point. All right, well, I don't see any questions. Teresa, do you see any questions on your end? I don't think I saw
No, I
any.
can't see
No.
in the Hoover. I can only see in the Zoom.
Okay. All right, then. Well, with that being said, I am gonna go ahead and share the survey, the link to the survey with you all, so you can take a look if you'd like to learn more. I'll share that in the chat. And then lastly, my contact information is right here on the screen if you like to contact me to learn more about this interesting research. And thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eileen. We really enjoyed your presentation today. And thank you to the audience for your participation in today's session. I am putting the link in the chat so that you may complete the survey to nominate TLC presentations for conference awards, as well as to share your feedback on this presentation. Thank you for joining us and see you at the next session.